Hey guys, welcome in. It's time for our weekly Thursday lunchtime devotion. I'm Mark Harvard, by the way. My name is Mark Harvard. I'm the Director of Communications for Clear Branch United Methodist Church. If you want more details about some of the things we have going on here at the church, I encourage you to go by check out our website. It's at clearbranch.org over on the World Wide Webs. Something we do every week. We do different sorts of online ministry. We stream our service, both our morning worship and our evening worship service. We do monthly nights of prayer, and we do our weekly lunchtime devotion. We get here every Thursday at noon, and we pray together. We do a little devotion. We talk about how God's working through our lives. Go ahead, do me a favor, and if you're watching on Facebook, share this stream with your timeline. If you're watching over on the YouTube, be sure to like, subscribe, and all that. If you're watching on my personal LinkedIn page, go by and find Clear Branch UMC over on LinkedIn and like it there. We're trying to get enough people to like Clear Branch over on LinkedIn to allow us to start broadcasting live there as well. So I had a conversation with someone yesterday, and they were talking about how they were seeing God work in a lot of places, and they were seeing the different ways that God works through people and around people. And in particular, yesterday, he was talking about how he was seeing God work through some struggles, and how it's almost like these hard times that these folks had to have to see the blessing that God was giving them. And that's totally true. I think God does work that way. It reminds me back in my food service days. We're going back, a decade or so ago. Well, actually over a decade ago. We're going back maybe 18, almost 20 years, maybe. Yikes. Wow. Feeling kind of old when I say that. But we are going back a few years when I was in food service, and I did expo for a Greek restaurant based out of the Birmingham area. And I was like the front line. I'm the guy that puts together the plates. The food would come to me different places, and I'd put it on the plate and plate it up and get it out, and to, kind of orchestrate how it was going to work through how it was going to get to the table that the food was going to. So I'm doing all this, and I forgot to put some salsa on a plate. That one of the menu items came with a little cup of salsa. So I forgot to put salsa on the plate. It was during lunch rush, and I was like, I forgot. I'm so sorry. Well, the owner standing there says, "Okay, Mark, here's something I'm going to do. Every time you make that mistake, I'm going to charge you a nickel." He said, "It's, not enough to kill you, but enough to make it sting a little bit if you do it a few times." And I think God works that way, God knows how much we can take. God knows what we are capable of and what we can handle, and he's never going to give us more than that. But at the same time, sometimes we have to have those hard lessons to be better or to be more what goes into God's plan. And I think this is actually mentioned over we're actually going to quote I'm pulling it up here. We're going to quote 2 Corinthians 12:10. "That's why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I'm weak, then I am strong." That's 2 Corinthians 12:10. So what does this mean? Well, first, let's look at what came before it in verse 9, with God telling Paul that God's strength is made perfect in weakness. So because God said that to Paul, Paul found pleasure not only in this particular affliction, but in the other difficulties of his life. So let's break this down just a hair. Part number 1, that's why, for Christ's sake, I delight. So in the previous verse, God tells Paul God's strength is made perfect in weakness. So because of that, Paul took pleasure. Go to the second part, in weaknesses. So the King James Version translates weaknesses as infirmities, and many scholars think this refers to diseases. So while, that's kind of the definition of where we're going with weaknesses. In insults, that refers to contempt or mockery, a heresy, rejection. In hardships, that refers to lack of physical basics of life. Now, remember, we're talking about folks back in the day that, they didn't have these first world problems. They were worried. They were still at a time when they were worried about starving. They were worried about feeding their family, shelter, food, water, clothing. These were things that they may or may not have. So these were real hardships. and in persecutions, Paul was stoned, left for dead. He was beaten in Philippi, killed in Rome. Those are persecutions, right? Real persecutions. In difficulties refers to various distressing situations. And we're talking spiritually and physically. And finally, for when I am weak, then I am strong. The more apparent Paul's weaknesses are, the more obvious it is that his successes, came from Jesus. So that's kind of the breakdown of that verse and where it came from. So think about that. The next time you feel like you're being persecuted, the next time you feel like life seems to be crashing down around you, that is where God works. That's where he comes strongest, when we need him the most. So keep that in mind next time life is crashing down around you, that we may or may not have the creature comforts that we would like, or things may not be happening on our timeline or the way we want them to work. But if we're roughing it a little bit, then God's going to be there for us. Okay, so got a couple of things before we get out of here. First off, if you need prayer, we do, we had the night of prayer earlier this week, but we do that the first of every month. But that's not the only time you can get prayer. If you need prayer, email prayer@clearbranch.org. We'll add it to our prayer list that we have in the church. And we also pray over all of those that come in, or you can leave it here in the comments, actually. I continue to check these comments throughout the rest of the day, so I'd invite you to do that. One more thing before we get to church on Sunday. This coming Sunday, as usual, we'll be streaming it live on Facebook, on YouTube. We'll also of course, absolutely be welcoming people in person. Now, because of some technical difficulties there in our main worship center in the sanctuary, we are worshiping in the cafe, and we're doing some changes this week, because we have some numbers that are rising, some COVID numbers that are rising. So we have to respond to that, but we have to not go overboard with it. So what we're doing is we're saying masks are encouraged, but not required for in-person worship on Sunday. Also, we're going to have a section for people that are only masked. If you're wearing a mask, you can sit anywhere, but if you're not wearing a mask, you can't sit in this one section. Try to make some people feel a little more comfortable. And also, we're going to spread out chairs a little more, just to give people a little extra room, There you go. So I hope to see you either with us online or in person on Sunday. Don't forget, you don't have to be a member of Clear Branch United Methodist Church to be a part of our lunchtime devotions. Thanks for joining us, and have a fantastic weekend.